Thank you, Finn, for those nice words. And we will continue from here with Pete Kersher, who was previous president of IDD and ambassador, and have done a lot.
I will be repeating some of the things that Finn said and saying them somewhat differently maybe, and also going into a little more depth in some respects. My topic is why design for all? And of course, to some extent already Finn answered that. Let me first of all also give you a site map, the same as Finn did, the things that I will be talking about. A little bit about design and human diversity, which I will approach slightly differently from the way that Finn did. Then I will have a very brief comparison between the concepts of design for all and universal design, which I shall approach in a totally different way from the way that Finn did, because there is a matrix which I shall explain when I get there. Then I'll show you some demographics, talking about the way that the population is developing in this part of the world, in Europe, and maybe some other places. And then I'll give you a few examples which I've chosen on the basis of the workshops that are going to take place tomorrow and the day after. Sorry, today and tomorrow. Because, well, actually I just ran a workshop last week in Poland, and we did have the mayor sitting there at the opening and sitting there also at the end, and at the end he actually made a commitment to adopt some of the things that we worked in just a 1.5 day workshop, which is amazing. So, you know, when there's a will, there's a way. The town was very small though, so it's easier to get the mayor to come and sit there. And he's been worked on by our people in that town for quite a long time. Eva Gołębiowska, for those of you who know her. So he was already half converted to the cause. It's another matter to get the mayor of the capital city to come along to a workshop. But, you know, you have to start somewhere. And I'm sure that in due course, the mayor of Tallinn will also be coming along to watch the results of the workshop. Not this one maybe, but by the end of this project, which lasts over a year, and which I think, by the way, is a fantastic project, I think you may well have attention from the city authorities. And by the way, I bring you the greetings of the future European Capital of Culture. So you see, we're keeping a very high level contact. One thing that Finn didn't mention is that we are, as EIDD, we are working at a very high level with, but very often the corporate decision makers do not know which questions to ask. So if they don't involve you at the right stage very early in making the design brief, you may not be able to impose an inclusive process. Now, a little bit about paradigms as well. Max Weber said that the paradigm is the glasses you use through which you see society. These are my cheap reading glasses which I carry with me. Without them I wouldn't be able to see anything reading. But with them I can't see anything at a distance. But anyway, you get the idea. You look through your glasses and the way you see the world changes. If we look through different glasses, the way we see the paradigm of the world changes. This is where we come from. Oh, I think I can put this pen away now, I don't need it anymore. The reason why you are all sitting here today is because you are lucky enough to descend from the ones of these, celebrating it all the time. It goes against everything that we need to communicate about the usefulness of design. Now, this is where it could get complicated. So, I'm warning you now, please don't fall asleep. I'm a lawyer by training, sorry, nobody's perfect. A very, very major problem for all of you, every one of you as a designer, or as an architect, or town planner, where you will find that everything is restricted and told to you by legislation and standards. Practically even the colour that you have to use. That's not the idea. Universal design doesn't start like that in America. It starts as an enabling process. But when you apply it in Europe, it really comes into big trouble. That's why we suggest you go the other way around, and you don't apply universal design in Europe at all, but you apply design for all, which is based on a European mindset and European matrix. We overcome the legislation by involving people, and therefore we minimize the need for the legislation. Then there are some other points here. Universal design has set up a checklist of principles, the famous 10 principles, the Decalogue. Now, it may be that the very good practitioners of universal design apply those principles coherently from the very beginning of the design process. But you and I know that not everybody is a very good practitioner in any case. It talks about everything, includes everything. It explores and researches the reality. The baseline in universal design, because of the checklist mentality, is identifiable groups. The wheelchair users here, the blind people there, the Rom here, the immigrants from West Africa here, the 0 to 5-year-olds here, the over 80s there. Our baseline in design for all is human diversity. We don't categorize people. You know, you can have such a thing as a blind 80-year-old Rom living in France. Where do you put them? Which group do you put them into? You see, we have to consider diversity. There are never any easy answers to design. Just challenges.
Thank you, Pete, for such inspiring speech. And I think as we are a little bit late with our schedule, I suggest that we'll ask questions later because Pete will be leading the panel and discussions at the end of the seminar.
Pete mentioned the dreaded word principle and also the dreaded word guideline. I couldn't think of a better way of describing it, but when I say principle, I want you to think of it as being, these are things that you should think about when you're approaching the whole wayfinding design process. Okay? So I work at the Royal College of Art. It's postgraduate School of Art and Design. I'm sure there are Estonians who study there. But we're one of 3 research centres at the Royal College. We grew out of the work of the gentleman on the right, Roger Coleman. He started an action research programme in 1991, which was looking at the design implications of the ageing demographic. How could designers respond to ageing societies and vice versa? And in 1999, Helen Hamlin, who is the widow of Sir Paul Hamlin, a very famous publisher, endowed a centre. I joined the centre in 2000. The problem was not the plaster. The problem was, in fact, the secondary packaging. All of them found difficulties with, because when you use a plaster, you're using it actually one-handed. You cut your finger, you're trying to rip off the secondary packaging, and you're trying to apply it with one hand. So everybody basically uses the plaster one-handed. And what the creative partners decided was that if you eliminate the secondary packaging and you change the way in which people interface with it, you'll have a great idea. Why Tom was involved, Tom here, that's a really interesting design question because it completely repositions the way in which you approach, and you go off on a different track. So this is the lateral thinking that Pete was talking about. So principle 1, or things to think about in number 1. Guidelines alone do not guarantee good design. Yes, it's for women, okay, but look at the pattern of use. Look at the way that door has been used. No, it's not been kicked, because this is at this height. It tells you 2 things. Okay? Well, it tells you, first of all, that door plates are not, human hands are not rectangular. Okay? That when you look at patterns of use, it shows you how people actually use them as opposed to how the design intends them to use them. So hands are not rectangular, number 1. And secondly, I think it tells you, here's a really good design opportunity to redesign a door plate, okay? And those are relatively simple to understand where key wayfinding information should be placed. This again is Seoul, and these are the four, you can't see it. Okay. These are the 4 key decision points we identified last week in the Insadong area of Seoul. This is a very, very complex tourist street, which is crowded with all kinds of stuff. But we're working with 22 disabled people and 8 designers. We went along the street and we identified those 4 decision points, okay? And it was very difficult because this is another issue, and the system itself, so that they can actually access it. What they've done in Seoul was, because I think they realised that their system was not working very well, was that they had live information in the form of these 2 walking information points, these 2 guys, who wore very distinctive red vests. And of course they made allowance for human fallibility by making sure that they were linked to an online information system via this guy's iPhone. You can see that, I don't know if you can see him, but on mainstream sites. And so the design team came, this is in 24 hours, they came up with the idea called My Patch, where people basically contribute their intimate knowledge of their area, okay, on a social networking site that other people can then access, okay? So there are lots of good sites out there. Hijack them, okay? Hijack them and subvert them, you know, so that they are used in a much more constructive way. And then this one is a service where Dublin has, and also London, have introduced a free bike scheme. Now the bicycle, so you can actually, you pay a small rental fee and you can ride the bicycle, you know, in central areas of London and in Dublin. Onto the plus one with a simple catch. So what they've created is basically a carrier that goes behind the bike, but also can be hired at the same way. The cover opens to create a seat, the bike is released from the station, and off they go into the sunset, okay? Nick and Feeney drive into the sunset, it says. So with the seat open, the plus one allows easy transport for 2 adults for short journeys. With the seat closed, the plus one can also be used to transport shopping and luggage, okay? And there's all these different design features, okay? The product aesthetics are designed to reflect the other components, making the product attractive to use. Thanks very much.